There is a word being used a lot on this continent right now: sovereignty. It appears in speeches, on billboards, in the names of state oil companies and newly commissioned refineries, in the declarations of presidents who smile for cameras in front of things being built. 3 countries, 3 coastlines, 3 very different versions of the same promise. This is what a machine saw when it looked underneath. Part 1. Nigeria. The refinery. Call it the most photographed industrial structure in Africa. 50 stories. Lekki Peninsula, Lagos. The Dangote Refinery. 650,000 barrels of crude oil every single day, turned into fuel, turned into plastics, turned into something that no one on this continent had managed at this scale, ever. Aliko Dangote stood in front of it and said what everyone in that crowd needed to hear. We will refine our own crude. We will set our own prices. We will not beg. The crowd believed him. The cameras loved him. And for a moment, if you squinted past the construction dust and the financing fine print, it looked like something was genuinely, finally, different. This is the part of the story everyone knows. Here is the part they don't. Before the first barrel moved through that refinery, the infrastructure to route around it was already being built. Not against it, not to destroy it, just around it. The way water routes around a rock, quietly, efficiently, without announcement. The trading houses, the companies that move more crude oil every year than most nations produce, had been watching this structure rise for years. They had modeled it. They had gamed the scenarios. They understood, long before the ribbon was cut, exactly what the refinery could do, and exactly what it couldn't. It could process crude. It could not control the price of the crude that fed it. It could produce fuel. It could not dictate where that fuel was sold, at what price, through whose terminals. Because those terminals, the ones that move refined product from the refinery into the market, those had already been mapped, already been contracted, already been positioned. The names you don't hear in the speeches were already in the room. They were not afraid of this refinery. They were, in a very precise and clinical way, prepared for it. Then there is what the machine found: a system designed to track behavioral signals across 32 points on the global map. Not news, not press releases, not the things people say when the cameras are on. What operators actually do, where they move, what language they use, what signals they send when they believe no one sophisticated enough to read them is watching. On the 24th of March 2026, it ran its pattern analysis. The result came back. Anomaly score 1.0. Maximum possible. The system had been producing the same score identically 5 weeks in a row. And then, on that day, it broke. A pattern that repeats identically 5 times does not break by accident. It breaks because something was decided. To the north, in the Persian Gulf, at a complex called Ras Laffan, the system's origin signal had been firing. One of the largest concentrations of liquefied natural gas production on the planet. The kind of facility that doesn't just supply energy, it sets the price of it globally when it moves. At the same time, the vessel tracking layer of the system logs something it calls dark entry. Ships that should be visible, tankers of a size that dwarf aircraft carriers, had gone silent in the Red Sea. In the Arabian Sea, the transponders off, not absent, unreadable. There is a sick behavioral signal the system calls flee. It does not mean people are running in the streets. It means that people who know what is coming, how official quietly, without announcement, begun to move. The refinery is real. The student is real. The ambition is real. The question was never a cross built. The questions, the one that did not about asked loudly enough, was who controls the ocean it sits next to. Part 2. Ghana. The signature. There is a specific kind of silence that follows a document being signed. Not the silence of an ending. The silence of a door being locked from the outside. Ghana heard that silence in December of 2022. They called it a default, a technical term, sovereign debt restructuring. The kind of language that keeps the panic at a manageable distance, that makes a catastrophe sound like an accounting adjustment. What it was, in plain terms, Ghana could not pay its debts. And so Ghana went to the institution that specializes in that situation, the International Monetary Fund, Washington, D.C. $3 billion. And the terms that come attached to $3 billion. Not terms you negotiate from a position of strength, terms you accept. This is where the story of the Jubilee Field becomes important. Because 12 years before that default, 12 years earlier, Ghana had its own moment. Offshore crude, real crude, billions of barrels sitting beneath the Atlantic floor. The cameras came, the presidents gave speeches. Africa Rising, they called it. What they did not say clearly enough was who owned the field. Tullow Oil, London. Cosmos Energy, Dallas, Texas. Aker Energy, Oslo, Norway. Ghana's National Petroleum Corporation, minority partner, in its own flagship field. The discovery was Ghanaian. The extraction was not. The revenue, by the time the operating costs, the financing costs, the contractual offtake agreements had been accounted for, the revenue was substantially not Ghanaian either. And the primary buyer of Jubilee crude for years was not a Ghanaian institution. The same name that appears in the Nigerian story appears here too. That is not a coincidence. That is a system. There is a map produced by that same intelligence software, the one tracking behavioral signals across 32 points, and on that map, Ghana's main port appears, not as a hub, not as a sovereign terminal, as a waypoint, the Atlantic Shipping Corridor, the route that every large crude tanker uses when it rounds the Cape of Good Hope and heads north toward the Americas. Ghana's port, Tema, is the second stop on that route. Canary Islands, Tema, Ghana, Cape Verde, Castries, St. Lucia, Buckeye Terminal. The ships using that route are not asking Ghana's permission. They are using the geography. And geography, it turns out, belongs to everyone, which means in practice, it belongs to whoever has built the infrastructure on top of it. When Ghana defaulted, it was not a sudden event. It was not a surprise to anyone who had been reading the contracts carefully. It was the visible surface of something much older, a series of arrangements, each one individually justifiable, that had accumulated across 12 years into a position from which there was no exit that did not require the permission of the people who had designed the position. The IMF is not a villain. The IMF is a creditor. Creditors protect their interests. That is precisely what creditors do. The silence after the signature was not dramatic. No ceremony, no cameras recording the moment. Just a new set of people in the room when the important decisions are made. Ghana still has its coastline, still has its port, still has its oil. It has all the things. It has lost the authority over the things. That is a very specific kind of loss, the hardest kind to explain, costly to walk back, because you cannot point to the moment that counted. It never one moment. It every moment, quietly, over 12 years, each one looking reasonable on its own. "60 miles east of Ghana's border, there is a port that 3 different governments in 3 different languages want to control. None of them are Togolese." Part 3. Togo. The auction. Say the name slowly. Lomé. It doesn't get said enough in the rooms where it matters. The port of Lomé is one of the deepest natural harbors on the West African coast. Deep enough for the largest cargo vessels on Earth. The kind of geography that, in another century, would have been the site of wars. The kind that empires were constructed to protect. Togo is a small country, a thin strip of land pressed between Ghana on the left and Benin on the right. 8 million people, no oil, no gas, no Jubilee Field, no refinery rising from a peninsula, just the port. The family that has governed this country for more than 50 years knows exactly what the port is worth. They have always known. The port is their entire negotiating position with the world. And right now, 3 separate conversations are happening about that port, simultaneously, in 3 languages. The Togolese are present for all of them. They are not leading any of them. In French, a major energy company and the government it represents. France has been losing its corridor through the Sahel. Burkina Faso gone, Mali gone, Niger gone, one after another. Military governments expelling French forces, rewriting the rules of engagement that had held for 60 years. France needs its coastal anchor more than it has in decades. Togo is that anchor. The offer, translated from the diplomatic language, is, "We protect you." Protection in this context means France maintains the arrangement as it has always been. In Mandarin, infrastructure investment, deep water port equipment, a 50-year construction horizon. The Chinese do not invest in ports because they believe in free trade. They invest in ports because a port is permanent. A crane installed in Lomé in 2026 is still there in 2076. The offer, translated, "We build for you." Building, in this context, means the geometry of the port gradually reflects a different set of interests. And from the north, a third conversation. No formal delegation, no embassy, but a presence. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. 3 landlocked countries that cannot reach the ocean without passing through either Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, or Togo. 3 countries that have expelled French military forces. 3 countries aligned now with a new political identity that explicitly rejects the supply chain they inherited. 3 countries that have welcomed instead the Russian contractors known as Wagner Group. They still need fuel. They are still landlocked. And they are arriving to renegotiate the terms on which they access the coast. What the behavioral intelligence system recorded in this region was a signal it classifies as passive fear. Not panic, not demonstrations. Something quieter and far more durable. The cognitive state of a population that has stopped believing its situation will improve through the channels that were made available to them. 19 points on the map, simultaneously, across the region. The loss framing score, the degree to which people frame their lives around what they are losing rather than what they might gain, was at its highest recorded level. The system's flaw indicator had reached what it designates physiological survival. This is not a political crisis with a political solution. Political crises have opposition parties and election cycles and press conferences with resolution dates. This of older than that. The kind of pressure that does not wait for the process to resolve it. The kind that finds its own release. The port of Lomé sits in the middle of all of it. 3 conversations, 3 languages, 3 visions of who this port belongs to when the current arrangement ends. And the current arrangement is ending.
The Convergence. The Window. March 24th, 2026. The intelligence system ran all 12 of its modules, 32 waypoints, every corridor, every behavioral signal it had access to across every operator, every market, every node. And it produced one number, 1.469. The number had been identical, 5 consecutive readings over 5 consecutive weeks, and then, on that day, it broke. A break in a sequence that never varied is not a fluctuation. It is not noise. It is a decision point. The system designates the period that follows, the orange window. 30 days. Then it becomes the red window. Nigeria is on the other side of that window. Ghana is on the other side of that window. Togo is on the other side of that window. 3 stories, tracked separately, running in parallel, arriving at the same date. The machine was not tracking a crisis. It was tracking a convergence. The moment when 3 separate promises, made to 3 countries in 3 registers over 3 different timelines, reached the same conclusion simultaneously. The refinery was never the point. The signature was never the end. The port was never theirs to keep. The Atlantic is patient. The tankers are already moving. What is written on the other side of the window has not happened yet, but the window is closing. Panacea, from the Greek, pan, all, akos, remedy, a cure for everything. The word itself was always the warning.